Before I get into the video, I want to give this disclaimer. I do not condone the use of any legal or illegal substances. The stories that are going to be heard today are my own stories from my past, and they are here for educational and a little bit of entertainment purposes, and that is it. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Today, we are going to be talking about my journey so far and how I have gotten to the place I am today. So, I guess it starts, I want to say back when I was around 13 or so. I don't know. I always felt like I was a bit different. I know it sounds cliche, but it's the truth. As I've touched upon in previous videos, I have some gifts that not a seems like not a lot of people have. It's not overly common. I'm not going to be getting that into these things today. That will be in a video later in the future. But I've gone through many spiritual practices growing up. Started out as your run-of-the-mill Christian. That didn't really float my boat. So I went looking for other religions to research and try out. And one of the religions that I found was spiritual Satanism. And that's kind of what kickstarted this whole thing. Spiritual Satanism showed me that there was a lot to this existence and a lot to this world that we don't know about, that no one's ever told us, because not a lot of people, well, I'd say not a lot of people, but not your everyday people know about, and only those that really go looking for it will find. So I did that for a few months and ended up not really working out for me, so I moved on to being agnostic and just researching a whole bunch of different things. Along the way, somehow, I came across this website by some guy. I can't even remember his name anymore, but it was a website teaching free Reiki lessons, or Reiki, however you want to say it. And it really interested me. So every evening after school, I would go home, sit down on the laptop or my phone or whatever, and just have at it, just go through, meditate on the sigils, meditate on the different practices that they taught, work on my chakras, just a daily thing for months. I think I practiced this for like 6 months, I think. I'm not too sure. It all feels very much so like a fever dream at this point. So in Reiki, there's like 3 general levels of expertise or mastery. And once you hit the third level, that's where like the really advanced stuff comes into play. And in the time that I was practicing this, I got somewhere around halfway to 3/4 of the way through the second level. I was very in tune with my chakras. I was very in tune with my own energy and the energy of the world around us. And that was probably one of the most balanced times in my life, around 14, 15 years old. Uh, it was really crazy. I remember the first time I ever really put it to use was just like a test to see if the things I had been practicing were actually doing anything, you know? So I ended up getting a scrape, like just a really small, minor scrape on my arm, like a little scratch. And I looked at it and I thought, well, this would be the perfect chance to try it out. So let's do it. So I sat down, I did my grounding meditation, focused on feeling the energy, and uh, placed my hand over the scratch and just concentrated on it, you know. And when I felt like I was done, I lifted my hand and the scratch was gone. I was able to actually feel the tissue stitching itself back together, which was an incredible feeling. Um, a few weeks after that, my younger brother had gotten, I think, a molar pulled. He'd gotten a tooth in the back pulled, and we were at some friend of our mother's place. They were doing some kind of like party. I think they were barbecuing or something. My brother was kind of, you know, telling me how much it sucked that he had just this mouth stuffed full of gauze all the time. And I asked him if he would let me speed up the healing time. I wasn't too sure if I could heal the wound entirely because I wasn't able to see it, and it was, you know, a lot more extensive than anything I had fiddled with. You know, I'd only been able, you know, I'd only healed like minor cuts and scratches on myself up to that point. So he said, yeah, I don't think it's going to work, but yeah, sure, whatever. His estimated time for this to heal was somewhere around 3 weeks. I did my thing, and after a week, it was fully healed. Our parents still don't know how it happened, and I'm not really inclined to tell them because they're just going to tell me I'm full of shit. But that's a thing that happened. After that, I hit a pretty rough patch of depression to the point where I stopped meditating, I stopped practicing Reiki, and, you know, my chakras got all screwed up, and I just got really unbalanced in my life. So what I ended up doing was pretty much just suffered for years. Ended up getting to the point around 17, 18 where my anger management just went out the window. It was just all rage all the time, just pure depression. And I don't know. I didn't know at the time how to really help myself. I just became very toxic. I ruined a lot of friendships. My some of my family relationships just went way downhill, you know. And I got to a point where I got tired of being angry all the time. I got tired of being toxic, and I wanted to change because I didn't want to be this loser who had no self-control and who was isolated and alienated from everyone for the rest of his life. Only issue was at the time I wasn't too sure exactly how to fix that. I was going to therapy and I was on medications, but none of it really seemed to help that much, really. And then around this time, I started, smoking weed with some friends. I'd go every other week. I'd go like every week, every other week, to a friend's place, and we'd all get high and have fun. And I started noticing that the weed was putting me in a place mentally where I could kind of detach a little bit from my emotions and I could view them a bit more objectively. So when I got the place that I'm living at now about 3 years ago, I ended up getting a half-ass decent job and was able to afford weed regularly. So I would, buy weed in bulk pretty much, quarter, half every here and, every few weeks. And I'd sit down and smoke a lot. I'd get really, really, really high. And then I'd just sit there and meditate, just, ask myself these really hard questions that no one wants to ask themselves, that no one really wants to deal with. And, started just working on myself bit by bit. And it worked. I mean, here I am today, a lot better of a person than I was 4 or 5 years ago, and I'm very thankful. It wasn't until I found the Psyched Substance channel that I realized that psychedelics could have this kind of, positive spiritual, healing aspect to them, and that they could help with stuff like this. And once I found his channel, I realized that, a lot of these substances that I'd heard about and that I had even thought about using just to get messed up and, forget about stuff, I could use for the exact opposite. So I set about doing a lot of research on different substances and just really, really wanted to experience it, but I had no way to. There's, I'm in the middle of Texas in a small town that anything that I would get here, I don't have a test kit, so I wouldn't know if it's actually LSD. I wouldn't know what it is that I'm taking. So I decided that I would know when the time was right, and when the time was right, an opportunity would present itself to me. Well, jump forward about another year. I'm 20, and so this is last year, towards the end of last year, just about to turn 21, and hadn't watched Psych Substance in months. I mean, it'd been a while since I'd watched his channel, and all of a sudden a video pops up in my recommended on YouTube, and I'm like, well, what's this? And it was his video with Quentin, the Quentin Experiment channel. And it was this guy taking 2 tabs of orange sunshines, 600 micrograms of LSD, really, really potent LSD. And I watched this whole video, and I was like, man, this guy is nuts. Here's this guy who just took 600 micrograms of really strong LSD, and he's sitting here, very, very well articulating his entire experience. I was like, man, this guy is awesome. I need to check this guy out. So I went to the link and I started watching his videos. I was like, wow, this guy is onto something. This guy's gonna, revolutionize this whole side of things. If there's gonna be change that happens, he's gonna be there. He's gonna be at the forefront in some way. And in one of the videos I watched, he mentioned his Discord server. I was like, oh shit, I'm on Discord, I'm gonna check this thing out, I'm probably not gonna be that active because I'm usually not in those kinds of things, but so I joined. Server already had like 5,500 people in it, and I was like, oh wow. So I start talking in there, and hop in the voice chat here and there and meet some really, really cool dudes who have a lot more experience with this stuff than I do. They start explaining about how you can transcend what we think is possible. You can transcend the human experience, and I'm vibing with these guys, I'm like, man, I don't know what the hell these guys are talking about half the time, but it's interesting and I want to learn more. And the stuff that I did know already just helped me start picking up and understanding what they were talking about that I didn't already get. And through this server, I was able to find a way to get my hands on some legitimate LSD. I bought a test kit. I bought my LSD. I'm not going to say how I got it, but I got it. It came. And by this time, I'd already been talking with these guys for about a month and a half. And I was like, so I told them that I had got it, and they're like, oh man, when are you dropping? And I was like, well, I'm off this day, so I'm gonna drop this night, and it's gonna be pretty lit. I dropped a tab and a half, right around 160 micrograms, and that just opened my mind up to so many things that, God, it was insane. I felt the connected oneness. I felt the, very minor, but I felt the jester vibes. Everything was just insanely crazy. It just concreted these ideas that I'd already been toying with in my mind. and that these guys had been talking with me about. And I kind of went on a bit of a binge. My next trip was right around 260 micrograms. And it was very interesting because when I hit the peak, it seemed to pick up where my last trip had left off on the peak. And it was cool, but I could tell that there was something deeper. There was something more there that wasn't fully able to access. So I asked one of my buddies, we were doing a group trip and a video call on Discord. And I asked one of my buddies in a private message. I was like, "Yo, this can go deeper, right? It can go deeper than this." And he goes, "Yeah, if you wanted to." And I was like, "I think I do. I want to see what else there is." So he asked me if I had any weed, and I had a joint. And he goes, "Well, take you some hits off of that, and just dive deep." So I'm like, sorry, kind of gassy. I'm like half an hour to an hour into the peak, and I grab my joint and I light it and I take a couple puffs and I set it down and wait it was probably like 5-10 minutes, honestly, but I wait a little bit and not really feeling anything different, so I pick it up, take another puff, put it out, and wait, and nothing. So I pick it up and puff, and put it out, and then before I know it, I've smoked half the joint. And all of a sudden, it just starts hitting me just deeper and deeper, and I'm like, "Hey guys, I'm sorry, but I gotta dip, I'm gonna go do my own thing for a little bit." And they're like, "All right." So I leave the call, I throw in some spangle, and it's like midday. I dropped it like 7 in the morning, and I'm like just getting lost in the visuals. Everything was so intense, and I go and I sit down in my bathroom on the floor because that's the darkest place I could get in my apartment. I have a cigarette lit about this far gone. I just sit in the dark, and I could see everything perfectly in the dark. I didn't need the light. Whether I closed my eyes or not, everything was outlined, and it was so ethereal. I just remember as the song was playing, and I'm like staring at my cigarette and just getting lost. I look up at the shower, and there's this little section that's like part of the plastic bathtub shower frame, whatever, that you can like set your soap or whatever on. And I'm just staring at it. And as the music's playing and I'm staring at this thing, I start feeling myself, me and this thing, start spiraling and twisting. We start going in like a Fibonacci spiral, and it just goes deeper and deeper. And as it spirals and as I spiral with it, I feel myself being pulled further away from my body, like something is like slowly pulling me out and spinning me around as it goes. It was very slow. And then just as I'd get right around the breaking point, it would snap and reverse, and I'd come back. And then after that, I had one more trip, and it just, I felt like I'd kind of hit a plateau, so I just stopped tripping for a while and, gave it about a month or so, and then came back, and that's when I started using LSD as more of like a tool to expand my consciousness. Don't get me wrong, I still have Still had my fun trips, you know. Just my last 2 trips were fun trips. They were just kind of resets. But I I'm generally now using LSD, and in the future we'll be using other psychedelics as a way to expand my consciousness and, you know, really explore these concepts that are just, until you experience them, they're almost impossible to comprehend sober. And it's almost impossible to experience these things sober, you know? So, it, I don't know, it's a funny thing, the way that this is progressing so far. It's really opened my eyes a lot and opened my mind and kind of showed me where I want to be at, and I have a general idea of the way I need to go about things to get to where I want to be. And this is only the beginning. I'm I've barely scratched the surface. Here pretty soon I'm going to be getting some DMT, and that's going to change everything. That I'm going to be thrown into the deep end. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Till next time, your local shaman signing off. Much love and good vibes.